Hey everybody, Raul here for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the extraordinary honor and pleasure of catching up with an old friend. You've seen him here the last time, September 2022. We chatted after Planet Zero around
Yeah.
that time. Eric Bass, yay!
What's up, man? How are you?
Oh, doing outstanding, outstanding.
Great.
Well, we're very excited to talk because you've got a new project that's just really exciting. And I kind of knew when I saw the word about it coming out because the last time we talked, you were in your studio, and I'm going to go and there's a lot that can happen in that studio. So I'm sure Eric's got to have something cooking up. You've got a new album. I Had a Name. It's going to drop February 28th, 2025 as we're talking. Tell us about the new project.
Oh man, well, it's a concept record, goes along with a graphic novel that I've written, and the graphic novel will be out later this year. They're not coming out simultaneously, and it's basically just taking snapshots from that graphic novel. Just in the same way that when I'm writing songs for Shinedown, I take snapshots of daily life. I just find things that I think are interesting, or we find things we think are interesting. And I do the same thing with this story that kind of came out of my head. I found moments in there that I really wanted to write songs about, and it just sort of happened. It chose me. I didn't really set out to do it. The idea popped in my head to put some music to this thing, and I kind of began slowly with it. And the next thing I knew, I turned around and I had a fully formed concept record around this dystopian world that I'm writing about. So that's really the genesis of it. I mean, there's a lot of nuance to the genesis of it. There's a lot of interesting story that we can get into, but that's in a nutshell kind of how it came into being.
Got you. Well, and previously, again, we've talked a lot about your work with Shinedown. Mm-hmm. However, this is a solo album for you, so this is different.
Yeah, all instruments performed by me, all lyrics written by me, all vocals sung by me, produced, mixed, engineered, all the way around. So yeah, that has definitely been different and kind of a gut check as well. In many different ways, mm-hmm. when you're writing songs with your friends, when Brent and I are in here writing for Shinedown, we can bounce things off of each other. What do you think about that? Do you think that's good? I think that's good. Do you think it's or do we need to change that, or what do you think about this and this? And there's a lot of things that go into that soup. When you're in here by yourself, you're it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to decide. And sometimes with some trepidation, you have to decide if something's really good or not. If you think it's good, because good is subjective, but is it, you have to kind of have that confidence to go, no, I really think this is great, and we're going to move forward with it. And so the flip side of that, though, is that I don't have to worry about anybody else's opinion when I'm writing my own thing too.
Yeah.
So there is that. I can kind of explore some absurdities that maybe I couldn't explore, on a Shinedown record. So
nice. Well, and one of the biggest challenges, especially with solo albums, and it's the kind of the blessing of studio work, is you can do track after track, so you can be physically in multiple places at the same time. But a lot of times, kind of I'll say the biggest challenge is that you have somebody who's really proficient with, we'll say, bass. That's kind of the main thing. But when it comes to the keys or even drumming, sometimes it can be rudimentary at best. How did you approach the challenge of these other instruments that aren't where you usually live?
Yeah, well, I tend to live. I actually live with a lot of different instruments, on a daily basis normally. So that helps. I play an awful lot of guitar. I play an awful lot of piano. I was in drumline in high school. That's the kind of the extent of my drum learning. What's interesting about this record is I like to say that I performed the drums, not necessarily played the drums. And the difference between performing and playing is this, as to not offend the drummers out there, because I realize how complicated what you do is. I basically set up the drums on stands. So I had the kick drum in front of me. I had the snare drum here, tom, like this. Mm-hmm. And I played everything with my hands, just like this, because I could get out what I could. I wanted to really perform everything on the record. I wanted to play everything. I wanted to put blood, sweat, and tears into everything on the record. And so, just playing, kick, snare, doing my fills. And I've got video of it too. I need to put some of it up on the internet. It took me a week and a half to record the drums.
Wow.
For the record, and just shredded my hands up, man. But then I go back and overdub cymbals and hi-hats and kind of the Dave Grohl method with that. He does a lot of drums first and cymbals second. Mm-hmm. Get great isolation on the drum kit. You can really make the drums really powerful when you do that. So that was interesting. That was really stepping outside of my comfort zone with the drums, for sure. I mean, I've got the hand technique to do what I needed to do. I don't have the foot technique to do all the double bass stuff, and that's really what led to me having this setup. there's one song on the record called "All Good Children," and it's a slower track, and I was able to sit down with that and do kick snare normally, on that track. But anything with double bass or anything fast, I just needed to, I was like, I'm not going to sit here and try to do this. This will be a comedy of errors if I try to sit down to a drum kit and play traditional drums. So yeah, man, just set them up on stands, and it actually created a really unique sound for the drum kit, because now you've got the kick drum, instead of being down on the floor, it's up. Wow. It's kind of slanted and it's pointed down this way rather than pointed out this way. And I played everything with mallets. So because of having the kick, and sometimes I'd have to cross hands to the kick drum and come back, I needed to have 2 mallets in my hand. So they were just these kind of hard, not the Lars Ulrich. I'm not a drummer, so I don't know the terminology, but not the Lars Ulrich mallets that he uses with the little plastic heads on, like the marching band mallets. Yeah. These actually had like a bit of felt on them on the ends, but they sounded great. And I probably hit the drums too hard too. That's the other thing, man. I'm just laying into these things, and it caused the drums to kind of choke out a little bit. If you hit a drum too hard, it can stymie the tone of the drum, but it became a vibe. It became kind of the vibe of the record. And so that was a really, really interesting thing. Again, probably gave me a lot of respect for drummers that I didn't have before. I've been around drummers my whole life. I produce records, I produce other bands. But what it did is it made me go, man, every time that I ask a drummer to do another take, that's asking a lot. It doesn't seem like a lot. Oh, just do another take. We'll do another take. And it's like, now I understand when I say do another take, what physically is going on, to get that done. So that was probably I extended myself more with that than I did with anything else. The other instruments, they're banjos and mandolins and pianos and trombones and trumpets and all these other things that I can play that appear on the record. But the drums was probably the thing that I had to kind of, explore more and really, really work hard on to get what I wanted out of it and to get great performances out. I mean, it wasn't. There were 1 or 2 songs, man, where I sat down and got out what I needed pretty quickly. There are other ones that I had to go digging on. Man, and then vocally, like stepping out from behind, I spent 85% of my life every night as a backup singer. So yeah, stepping out in front and singing lead on things was super interesting, and trying to find my voice. The thing that a lot of people don't think about with singing, people who don't sing, something they don't think about is not how well you can sing, it's how well you emote. It's how well you get the emotion across of what you're trying to, what are you trying to convey to somebody? I mean, rock and roll is, ripe with great vocalists who aren't great singers. I think about Tom Petty's the one that comes to mind first. Yeah. It's like, Tom Petty's not a great traditional singer, but man, he just gets you. He just delivers the goods. You can say Bob Dylan, the same thing. So that was the thing, is trying to really work on getting the emotion across. Because I can sing, I sing every night of my life when I'm on tour. It's emoting, because normally as a backup singer, you're not trying to emote too much. You're trying to just support the guy that's up there doing it. And so when the roles changed, the first couple of vocal takes I did, I'm like, man, that just seems, the performance is flat. Not the notes. Some of those were flat too, but but the performance was flat, and I really had to kind of, figure out ways for me to get my emotion across. So those are probably the 2 most challenging things. Were those 2 pieces. Everything else is kind of in my wheelhouse. The guitar's in my wheelhouse. The piano's in my wheelhouse. Keyboards, orchestral arrangements. Programming, that kind of stuff. I do that stuff pretty much daily. So, but yeah, drums and vocals, man. That was the heavy lifting for sure.
Well, and I've had the opportunity to see a couple of videos, Azalea and Mind Control, and you've done something very interesting, because again, it's a new, I'll say, unique position in that the other musicians, it's not just the other sounds behind you, but they're faceless. Yeah. So they're non-existent, but they're there. And from what I recall, mostly, I don't think I saw you on bass. It was more the lead vocals or on the keys. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so the record opens with so a little bit about the videos. That's my first time directing videos, my first time editing videos, my first time doing VFX in videos. I had to learn a lot of things to get those videos done. But I'm kind of a DIY guy, man. Yeah. I got to, I like to do things myself. Honestly, man, the kind of the faceless band was a solution to a problem, which is, look, I played every instrument on the record. and I don't want to make it seem like I had a band, you know? And so if I just put people behind me playing instruments, it's going to seem as though this is the band that played on the record.
Yeah.
I was able to pull some of the lore from the graphic novel and the story, these machines that they use on this world. And I was like, oh man, I could make them play instruments, and then sort of have each character in this record has a logo. They're 4 different pieces of iconography, and I'm like, well, I can put each song, I could put that different piece of iconography on the front of the face, you know. But the whole thing opens with me sitting down at a piano and playing the intro to the record, which is a song called "A World Unseen." And so there are 5 videos actually they're going to come out, and so you watch them from beginning to end. You know, you'll see me it'll keep going back and forth to me sitting at a piano and then back into this other world. Yeah, I didn't play any instruments in the videos other than just sitting down at that piano that one time. Everything else I'm just singing. So yeah. That, again, man, a departure, you know, like getting out of my comfort zone and you know, look, any bass players who are listening to this understand that we are 9 times out of 10 the out of focus guy, you know. we're the background guy forever and ever. So, you know, kind of stepping out in front. And it's interesting, man. I hadn't thought about that with the videos either. I hadn't thought about performance in that way because I was so busy I built all the props and again, you know, was just herding cats for these videos. I mean, there were 30 people on set every day that I was responsible for. I've never done this before. Thankfully, it's very akin to producing records. It's very much the same job. So I fell into the job part of it pretty easily, into the directing part. But, you know, it's like it felt like just all of a sudden it was like, it's your turn, dude. You got to get up and perform. And I was like, you know, I hadn't thought about what I was going to do. I hadn't just held a microphone in my hand, you know, maybe other than karaoke, maybe ever. Yeah. Because any other bands that I've sang in, I've always had a guitar or a bass, you know, and I've been singing. So it's like now it's like, oh man, this is real. And so I just, it's actually, it makes it very honest because the performance you're seeing is honestly what came out in that moment. You know, whether I'm at the podium playing a character in Mind Control, or I'm just playing myself in the Azalea video and some of the other videos where I'm just have a microphone and I'm kind of in there with the band. That is an honest representation of me in that moment of like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've never done this before. Wow. Here's what it's going to look like, you know? So I'm very blessed to have the career that I have and be in the band that I'm in. And what comes along with that is, you know, you become a performer. A lot of the times, you know, we just get thought of as musicians, but honestly, if I had to, I'm more of an entertainer than a musician on a nightly basis. Sure. It's actually crazy how, you know, on stage, how my mind just checks out. It's muscle memory stuff, man. Of course there are moments when I'm thinking about what I'm playing, but like I would say probably 75% of the show, I'm just engaged in entertaining and performing rather than playing. So that really became very helpful to me when it was time to, again, I was so busy with everything else. I hadn't thought about what I was going to do performance wise, but it's like, hey man, you're on. And, I just went with it, you know, and turned on that performer thing and you know, tried to come through the camera and deliver a performance the same way I would into a microphone or something, you know? So.
Very nice. Well, and it does raise the question, because in the logistic challenges, would this be something you'd ever try to tour, because you can't physically play all of the instruments at the same time?
So that I had said I wasn't going to tour on this at all, but then it started coming up in these interviews, you know, that I've been doing, and so it made me start to think about, you know, whether or not that was maybe a possibility. And now I've started to sort of throw it around in my brain. Basically, what I would end up doing is I'd probably end up with sort of a multi-instrumental sort of stage setup. I use Slipknot as an example. Probably a lot of musicians, probably, you know, 8 to 9 musicians on stage, you know, probably 3 guitar players and a couple of percussion players and key player. And, you know, I'd love it if the drummer played like this, you know, if he played the way that I did the record, you know. I think that would be really interesting. Have somebody playing cymbals and hi-hats and all this stuff, and somebody up there doing this, you know. So with that in mind, I've actually reached out to a few of my friends in other bands who people would know, and I've thought about just doing like an all-star band. It wouldn't be I wouldn't have the faceless band up there or anything, you know. It would be, I would just do it as like a a really cool experience for people. It's like, man, we get to go listen to Eric Bass's record, but I know that person and 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 that person from other bands.
Sure.
And I think it'd be a cool experience. And then, I definitely want to dig in on the production and, do some, because this is such a visual thing with the graphic novel and trying to bring that animated world into the videos. So there's, it's a very visual experience for me, at least in my head. So I'd want to bring that to the stage. So, I put an awful lot of thought into something that I might not ever do, but it seems as though, like, if I can find the time with Shinedown's schedule, that being the biggest thing. It would probably be the end of this year sometime. Maybe I'd have a chance to do a handful of dates around the country and then in Europe. But I think it would be fun, especially if I get myself in shape touring with Shinedown, singing every night. That's the other big thing is, if I'm going to go out and sing lead vocals every night, I need to be in shape before I leave the house for sure, because that's a big ask. So, singing a 2-hour show with Shinedown every night, I'm sure I could go out and do, that would be a great way for me to just go, okay, now I'm leaving this and going and doing my own thing. So, it's possible. I've talked to some people. I've started kind of, tossing it around in my brain, and I would give it probably a 70% chance of happening. How's that?
That sounds
pretty. I know that's oddly specific, but there you go.
That sounds very reasonable to me. And again, it sounds like it's such a multisensorial kind of project that as much attention has to go to the show, and the visuals, as it would be all of the music, and then having the musicians that can replicate. And in that instance, then you would be the one that has to approve of what they're doing, whereas you've done it on your own.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's yeah, I guess so. I was going to say, I would obviously hire people that I know, ask and
sure.
Hire sounds like a bad thing to say. They're my friends, so it feels weird to say hire, but to have these people come out, I mean, I would obviously have them there because I know what their capabilities are, but yeah, then I've started thinking about it. I'm like, well, what if they didn't play things exactly right or whatever? I'm that guy, man, like where I want to hear it like it's supposed to be, So they might hate me by the time we're all said and done, but I mean, I think it would be a lot of fun to hear the sound of something that I made like that coming from a stage, because I made this thing in this room basically, and it was a very insular experience, so it'd be interesting to experience it out with others. So,
indeed. Well, and again, I think the key with circling back is even when you mentioned the drums, and you would take a different approach, finding a drummer that would say, "Okay, yeah, I'll drum that way," versus no, I have to have my kit and I'll be seated, and this is how this is going to work. So, it has some challenges, but there's so many exciting things that are up in the air. Where would the best place because I know people are going to go, hey, I want to see that if it shows up with the 70% chance. Where would be the best place for people to look if they want to kind of stay on top of what this whole thing progressing is?
Yeah, my Instagram is the only social media that I really have. Is it's ebassprod is my @ebassprod is my Instagram, and I'm there would be announcements on there for sure. I also have Eric Bass Presents YouTube page as well. So yeah, I would definitely be announcing it there for sure. And if that were something that I was going to do, I'd make sure that I promoted it well for sure, absolutely. Because there's, I would hate to go out there and not have anybody show up. So, so indeed. Got to do that.
Well, and if nothing else, because they're still pending also the graphic novel and other related pieces. And so again, in the realm of so many things that are going on around us at any given time, I mean, you go, hey, I wonder if this happened, because I know you've seen it too, that sometimes they'll project, oh, this is going to happen on such and such a date. And then when the date rolls around, you kind of go, oh, yeah, cricket.
Yeah, I know. We as musicians have a tendency to put things out into the universe because we're like, if I put it out there, it's got to happen. And then we get going on it. And we're like, I don't think I can meet that deadline.
Yeah.
We got to push things back and move things around. And I'm dealing with that now. Actually, I've had to just internally had to push some dates back. It's just what happens, especially being sort of a small operation. It's like I'm just one of those people that I don't have to do everything myself, but I have to be involved with every aspect of what I'm doing. And, just like with these videos, it's like my plan was to have someone else edit them. And then I started digging into the footage and I'm like, man, I'm going to lose my mind trying to tell someone else how to put this story together. I know how the story needs to be put together. And so I started editing it, again, not having really edited anything before. And, just recently I was putting my CD artwork together, and doing all of that stuff in Photoshop and bringing all that stuff in. And so when you do that, when you're that involved with every single aspect of what you're doing, and also in the meantime with that, producing and mixing new Shinedown songs and writing new Shinedown songs in the midst of all of this, you might set some goals that don't get met. So, but yeah, just keep up with me on Instagram. If anything's going to happen, it's going to happen there. So
there you go. Well, Eric, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to share this very exciting project. Folks, I Had a Name scheduled to release on February 28th.
Will be released on February 28th.
There we go. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah,
You've seen him here on Bass Musician Magazine, Eric Bass.